Well, what's up today, guys?
Not a whole lot. How are you doing, buddy?
Pretty good, pretty good. Um,
Tell us about the new setup.
yeah, I don't know how much you can tell from your camera views, but I'll upload a picture later. But we've got a new room that we're doing the podcast in, so we now have a dedicated space. So that's pretty cool. I'm pretty excited about it. We might eventually paint in here and add some memorabilia, but just the curtains and having a dedicated space is good for the time being. What do y'all think about that? Do y'all think we ought to just leave the curtains indefinitely, or do you think we ought to add more
Well, the
stuff?
cameras are pretty good. I mean, the
The
curtains are pretty
curtains,
good. Yeah.
yeah, they'll definitely work near term, and we can always uh change things up later. But uh, yeah. What about you, Jack? I know you're probably liking the change, huh?
Yeah, I really like it. I think we could always make changes going forward. I know you said you didn't really like the um in the curtains, like it being I can't think of the word.
Uh,
They're not smoothed out. I kind of like it though. I
wrinkles,
like the
wrinkles.
wrinkles.
Yeah. They may fall off on their own, and even if they don't, we can always throw them in the dryer or iron them down or something. But I mean, even with that, I still like the look. I think it's good. Um, but yeah, uh, still a lot going on in the world. It seems over the past couple weeks. I know we've talked about shootings happening plenty of times, but what was it last week when the 3 shootings in Mississippi happened?
That's right.
Um, and I hadn't even looked to see if there's been more this week. I'm sure there has. Most of the news that I've been hearing this week seems like it revolves back around China and Russia again.
And the shutdown.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm glad you bring that up. The shutdown, one of y'all, how many days are we at now, do you think?
Well, they have just failed to pass a funding bill for the 11th time so far.
So at least 11 days, we're closing in on a couple weeks or something like that, maybe.
I'm looking it up.
I haven't seen the exact number of days. I will tell you this. It was the quote unquote no kings protest again this past weekend.
21 days.
20, dang, we're at 21 days of shutdown.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm assuming the military still hadn't been paid at this point. Or I know that they said they were trying to pay them, but I don't know if they've actually gotten paid.
Well, I did see that Cash Patel said the FBI was going to be paid. I'm not sure where they're unless they're using or re-diverting funds to do that. But also back to those protests from this past weekend, Democrats I hear were emboldened by the show up of the number of people who showed up. So they think that that they have more support for the shutdown right now. So that's why they're extending it. It's all political, really, right now. They think that they have the capital to spend on that, so they're going to.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard a couple politicians. I think one of them may have been, who's the funny one from, is it Tim or Tim Kennedy, maybe? Something like that.
Kennedy is the last name. I can't remember his first name. But,
yeah. But anyway, I think I heard him saying that he expects it to last a good little while. But man, I don't know. I think I was telling you the other day, if it was me and I wasn't getting paid, I'd be getting pretty fed up. 21 days. I mean, I'm the thought of people expecting you to show up week after week and you've got your bills, and you're not being paid. That's crazy.
Well, my thing isn't even them. I mean, it's on them to get it passed. It's the people who are working like regular jobs, like whether it's in the police department or like the FBI, like just stuff like that. It's just they need to get paid, like.
Yeah, those are the guys that I'm mainly concerned about, and politicians are still getting paid. Like Congress and the Senate aren't going to stop themselves from being paid.
Well, right now, the left, all they want to do is slow down Trump as much as they can.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's what it feels like.
he's in his last term that he can run, or that he can be president, and any day delayed for an agenda for him is a win for them.
Yeah,
Um, he did get a win in an appellate court this weekend in being able to send troops to Portland, so that's a good thing. Um, Portland, they're having a lot of unrest and trouble there. It's worse than a lot of third world countries in Portland, and hopefully all that'll be taken care of coming up.
yeah, yeah. I imagine. I don't. I don't know if they've sent anything to Seattle, but it seems like major Democrat cities are where they're sending ICE, uh, border. I've seen border patrol guys too.
Sure.
Um, and then yeah, others like the National Guard. Chicago has been another one lately that it seems like a lot of drama has been going on in Chicago.
Hmm.
So hopefully that'll get better over time. I've also seen where it, I want to say they blew up another drug smuggling boat or something
Yes,
over the
there's been
past week or
several of
two.
those, and this one was rather dramatic as well.
Yeah. What was so dramatic about it? I really didn't look into it that
Well,
big.
it was a big flashy explosion for sure, but it's always amazing how you see that washout, because you got uh, the real good cameras on it that are able to see even in daylight. But when that big flash occurs, there's a washout, of light, and then it just shows the aftermath, all the pieces in the water and the boat destroyed, and everything happens real quick, and it's pretty much millions and millions of dollars at least for them down the drain
Yeah.
in a blink of an eye, and
Yeah. It's I can I can imagine that they're losing decent, especially if it's something like cocaine. Uh I don't know how much, it is per kilo or whatever the size is, but I would imagine it's in the thousands of dollars. And I'm sure I've
are
heard
you
that.
are you talking about the product being lost? Oh, it's
Mhm.
millions of
Yep.
dollars.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And
Uh,
they're from what I understand, they now have some pretty advanced little submarines that they're using and transporting these things in. So
and also, you would think, what is this, the 3rd or 4th time this has happened, in the last little bit? Um, Word's gonna get out, and you would think that seeing these kind of things happen, that you would run into less and less people who are willing to take that chance.
yeah.
Uh, but, I know that I heard I heard figures like if they were able to make it to their destination, those mules are getting like $1 million to, to make those runs, which I honestly, I guess is tempting. However, uh, whether what kind of
What's your
percentage
life
yeah,
expectancy?
yeah, what kind of percentage chance you have of making it out alive,
Yeah.
may put a damper on that.
Yep. Um Also, real quick before I forget, if you enjoy the content, like watching us, like and subscribe. Right now, it's probably going to help us the most on YouTube, but if you have another platform like Spotify, Apple Podcasts that you watch us on, a like and subscribe, follow would help on those as well. But back to what we were talking about. Another thing that I noticed, and I'm not sure how many of these are completely authentic or if they're just like being made by somebody just to try to take advantage of the situation, but I've been seeing clips where it looks like the cartels advertising. They're like, it was something about like we've got vacancies,
Yeah, yeah.
like joking around about the
Recent
boats.
vacancies, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, it's probably some of those AI things, but,
yeah. But I mean, TikTok, being that it's a Chinese platform, the odd thing is it seems much more Wild Westish in terms of like who can upload videos. So like some of these might actually be the cartel putting these videos out
wow.
because I've heard that actually use social media and other tools just like everybody else to recruit.
Sure.
So some of these could actually be legit cartel members creating these videos and trying to recruit
Well, one
people.
thing's for sure, they can't keep eating these millions and millions of dollars of losses and, uh, and be able to survive after a while. Um, you can only lose, I guess, so many of those before it starts hurting you.
Hmm.
Um, of course, the markup on those things, I hear that they're able to make this stuff for fairly cheap, but, you
Well,
know,
when you cut it with fentanyl, yeah,
right, right.
I'm sure that helps a lot.
Well, I mean, you keep hearing about these people that are arrested, uh, sometimes single individuals who have enough to kill thousands and thousands and thousands of people. Uh, it's amazing how potent that stuff is. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I told somebody before, I don't understand. I mean, I understand the sake the part about wanting to cut something up so that you save some money, but if that's something that you're cutting it up with kills your customers, doesn't that defeat the purpose?
Right.
Um, that confuses me.
That's
But
right.
um, but yeah, a lot of a lot of that going on. Um,
Of course, when you have people that their technical expertise is making money, uh, uh, the technical expertise probably gets taken away from the technical side of making the drug.
Riverside is an AI platform. We use it for the podcast. It's really helpful. Helps us create good short content and do some final editing on our videos. So if any of you watching are aspiring creators, video folks, social media folks, I highly encourage you to take a look at Riverside. We'll put a link in the comments or in the description. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Um I'm gonna go into some scripture real quick too before I forget.
Yeah, speaking of drugs.
Yeah.
No, no.
Yeah, I don't really know what scripture has to do with drugs, but um, let's see. So First Timothy 5. Oh, and before I read this off, whether you're a man or a woman, I'm sure one of these is gonna irritate you when you hear this. So don't. I'm not just trying to pick on men, and I'm not just trying to pick on women. We're picking on both. Uh, so you're both gonna catch a little criticism from these.
1
Let's
Timothy
see.
5.
Um, where is it? I think it is, yeah, verse 8. First Timothy 5, verse 8. But if anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for members of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. And then the other one we are jumping to, I believe it is Proverbs 27:1. Let me read that off. Let's see. Or Proverbs 27. This is going to be a little bit longer. I'm going to go 1 through 17, read the whole thing. Do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring. Let another praise you, and not your own mouth, a stranger, and not your own lips. And this is ESV that I'm reading from, in case anybody wants to look at it later. A stone is heavy, and sand is weighty, but a fool's provocation is heavier than both. Wrath is cruel, anger is overwhelming, but who can stand before jealousy? Better is open rebuke than hidden love. I agree with that one for sure. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, profuse are the kisses of an enemy. One who is full loathes honey, but to one who is hungry, everything bitter is sweet. Like a bird that strays from its nest is a man who strays from his home. Oil and perfume make the heart glad, and the sweetness of a friend comes from his earnest counsel. Do not forsake your friend and your father's friend, and do not go to your brother's house in the day of your calamity. Better is a neighbor who is near than a brother who is far away. Be wise, my son, and make my heart glad, that I may answer him who reproaches me. The prudent sees danger and hides himself, but the simple go on and suffer for it. Take a man's garment when he has put up security for a stranger, and hold it in pledge when he puts up security for an adulteress. Whoever blesses his neighbor with a loud voice, rising early in the morning, will be counted as cursing. A continual dripping on a rainy day and a quarrelsome wife are alike. To restrain her is to restrain the wind or to grasp oil in one's right hand. Iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another. Okay. So a whole lot of meat right there. And what I was talking about earlier, whether you're a man or a woman, the quarrelsome the quarrelsome wife verse there tends to, I'm sure, irritate some, but
Yeah, they're the worst.
but also there's plenty of scripture in here for men too, so don't let that offend you too much. um but yeah, these verses about, let me find an example. He it sounds to me in several of these verses like he's talking about it's good to accept constructive criticism. He doesn't use those words, but I'm trying to find an example. He talks about provocation, and he talks about that I may answer him who reproaches me. But yeah, Chris, what are your thoughts on these?
Um, especially the verse that we went over in First Timothy in the beginning. Um, Holy Spirit inspired words written by Paul, telling us that we are worse than an infidel. We are worse than an unbeliever, worse than someone who has denied the faith
If we don't
if we
provide.
don't provide for our family. Now, those are strong words. Now,
Yeah, very
not
strong.
that's not one that you hear all the time. However, this is Paul telling us that we are worse than an unbeliever. And you think, from a standpoint of someone who is a believer, that being an unbeliever would be the worst thing that you could be.
Mm-hmm.
Just just not believing in the truth of the gospel is the worst it could get. Paul says, no, uh, you're worse than an unbeliever if you don't provide for your family. Um, God expects us to be working. He expects us to be hard workers. We're told that in several other places, and especially by Paul as well, that we should not eat if we don't work. Uh, which is another standpoint of putting others ahead of ourselves. Uh, I've heard stories, especially back during the Depression time, where there was not enough food to go around for decent portions for a family, and frequently the parents, especially the father, would go without to make sure that his wife and kids had food during that time. Uh, an awesome sacrifice, especially for a person who's providing that food. However, uh, you go to what we have today, and it's a much different culture that we live in. It's about providing and getting stuff from me first. And I think that, especially if we went back to the Bible and went by like we were supposed to, putting others ahead of ourselves, uh, if men would start doing that and acting like men, uh, this world would change for the better for sure. But we have to be willing, as the Bible tells us, to put others ahead of ourselves for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. I think part of the and I've heard some other um religious podcasters and so on talk about how, you know, and I'm talking about Christian podcasters and influencers here. They talk about the type of Christian that just goes and hangs out at the coffee shop and doesn't have a job and just wants to worship and pray and not ever do any work. And to me, that verse, and I mean, if you look at the life of Jesus, Jesus started his ministry at what age? 30.
30, ministries 30.
Yeah,
Mhm,
in his 30s. Um, and prior to that, as far as we know, he was carpentry, right?
mhm, mhm.
So spent a good 29. Well, I don't know at what point or how young he was when he started, but up until he began his more serious work in ministry, he had to provide for himself and his family,
Mhm.
and I would assume he did that through carpentry. And then we have other verses throughout the Bible that, uh, we've got parables that talk about wealth, and then we've got other things that tell us about the importance of good stewardship. Um, but yeah, like Chris said, that all comes back around to, as a man, especially a man with faith in Jesus, it is your duty and your responsibility to earn an income and provide, not only for yourself but for others, especially your family. Um, and then hopefully you do a good enough job and you have a surplus that can go around even more than that. Um, but yeah, very, very serious verse there. Um, Speaking of which, another thing I figured I'd bring up today while we're talking about this is we haven't really talked much about personal finance and household fund management and that sort of thing lately. Um, have either of you two do either of you two ever watch or see anything about the price of precious metals versus the dollar? Or
The only thing
No.
I have kept up with lately is the price of gold because I know it's up there.
yeah, somebody either, well, first take a guess and then look it up at what the price of gold is today.
My guess is I don't believe
Per
that.
ounce.
Well, I wouldn't believe that it has fallen. Uh, I know I know that it uh I know that it has recently gone over $4,000 an ounce. Now I don't know how far or how much it's increased, but I do know, and that's the reason I know is because that was mentioned on the news that it had broken that barrier.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it dropped a little bit today. They were going down today, but um Chris, heads up.
Look at that.
Yep. So that that I just threw to Chris, put it in the camera real quick.
Yeah.
If that is, and I believe that it is 0.999 gold, then Chris right there is holding roughly $4,200. So,
Oh.
which is really the reason I bring this up today.
I mean,
And
this
then
was a gift, right? I mean,
man, I wish I could afford to give you that much. I could give you a piece of silver, which
so
is
this
what this
this is
is.
an ounce.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this is an ounce of silver, 0.999 fine. And silver, the other day it was like 51, but it might be 47 today. But
Just out of curiosity, if you don't mind me asking,
no, go ahead.
and you can cut this out if you want to.
Nah, go ahead.
When you purchased this, what was it?
Well, actually, those are not, well, I purchased some others a while back. So when I purchased what I originally purchased, I want to say gold was somewhere around 1,200 maybe.
Oh, wow.
So in in the past year or two, it has, I feel like, gone up practically 4 times what it used to be. And silver, when
Since you've bought it.
yeah, some
Oh,
of it.
wow.
Now some of this is a little bit newer purchase, but the stash that I originally bought was years ago before the big swings.
Yeah, it says $4,249
Yeah,
per ounce.
wait, what was that? One more time.
$4,249.
Wow.
Okay.
It's gone up even more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And silver was, I want to say when I bought silver, it was like 16, 17 bucks, something like that. And now it's, around 50, which definitely isn't as dramatic as the increase in gold. But anyway, I say all this to say that,
Kind of.
yeah, let me see if I can say all that to say it is, not a bad idea to have a little bit of that, especially now when, and I know the Bible, don't get me wrong, you need to heed is my mic still on?
Yes, I hear
I
it.
hear it.
Okay. I guess I just sounded differently to myself. But the Bible obviously warns you about greed and it warns you about precious metals and you should store up treasure in heaven. All that is very true. But the one thing that I want you to understand is that we now live in a society that we use paper money. And so because we use paper money, there's a cost to that most of us don't see. So I would suggest, especially in an environment like today, I would suggest that people, as far as their liquid money, liquid assets, I would have at least 15, 20%. And even if it was just silver and no gold.
I looked up just to because everybody has this image in their head right now of uh, the bricks of gold that they make.
Mhm.
They're just over 27 pounds for that brick of gold, which puts the value of that brick today at just under $1.7 million
You,
for the one brick.
did you say 4.7 million? Is that
Yeah, 1.7 million
1.7?
for a 27.4 pound brick of gold,
Jeez.
which is the average size of a brick of gold.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to say a kilo. I've, the smaller business folks that purchase stuff like this typically do it in kilo bars. And I want to say a kilo is like 34, 35 ounces, something like that
32.15 troy ounces
for a kilo.
per kilo.
So multiply that by, let's say 42 or 42.50, and then you have a kilo of gold would be 100 and something thousand, I would imagine. And then a kilo of silver, let's just say it was 50. I want to say the other day that would have been like $1,800. Let's say if the price of silver was 50 times, what'd you say, 32?
What you
32
said a
ounces?
second ago is $136,927.
Yeah, so that's a kilo of gold, almost 137,000.
Right.
Now that's crazy. Gold, and that goes to show you why gold tends to be what at least government and central banks tend to, in times like these, they tend to buy more gold because it's, even though silver has gone up over time, gold, for whatever reason, because of its rarity, its use cases, the price tends to be a little bit more stable than silver.
Which also goes to show you because they're not in business to lose money.
Yeah.
Which also
Yeah.
goes to show you why all the pawn shops will buy gold from you.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why
Pawn shops are very bullish on
yeah.
on gold.
Yeah. And that's the thing, a lot of places are happy to buy it from you, and there aren't too many places that are happy to sell it to you.
Right.
And it seems like as it goes up over time, that's, less and less places. But the places that will sell it to you, the other downside is you're always going to have some sort of premium. You want to, if you're doing it for investment purposes or what it's originally designed for, which is to protect you, to be a hedge against inflation, you want to, dang, I keep losing my train of thought here. What was I saying there?
Something about gold.
Hey, Jack, pause it for just a second. Let me have a minute till I can, or whatever. Just let me know when we're starting.
We're
back.
on.
Okay. Yeah. So buying it for a spot price is pretty difficult, but if you're,
Which means what to the layman?
yeah. So what spot price is basically the general market, mass market price, or I'm sure there's a better word for that. I can't think of right now.
Like
Wholesale, like a wholesale price type.
I didn't know
So,
it was possible to get a different price.
well, I mean, spot price, it doesn't, I probably shouldn't say wholesale price. Spot price is like the day to day fluctuation price, basically. And then any precious metal dealer or pawn shop or whatever is going to expect to be able to, either buy it from you cheaper than that spot price and or sell it to you higher than that spot price in
So when
order
you take it to a pawn shop and they say, "I'll give you such and such for it," they're not giving you today's price for it. They're just saying, "I'll give you this for it."
yeah. Yeah, they'll look at the spot price and they'll offer you something general. If they're fair, they'll offer you something fair, but it's never going to be
Yeah,
as
gonna
good
be
as,
less than.
yeah, it's always going to be less than. But the smart ones won't try to cheat you too bad. They'll leave just enough to where it would be hard for you to turn it down. But you're always going to have some folks that will try to cheat you.
And that's
But
what they tell you about, I've always heard this
whoops,
about buying cars, like buying old cars and that kind of thing. I've seen many people talk about this that do that for a living. Yeah, they'll fix up cars and sell them. Uh, they almost to a one say that if you put cash in front of someone, even if it's a ridiculous price, most people are unable to turn it down. If
yeah,
the cash is sitting in front of them, they will take the price, even if it's a cut, a large cut in what they're asking because they're unable to resist the cash that's in front of them.
yeah. Yeah, and we've always had that saying of cash is king, and that is true when it comes to a lot of other forms of money. The more you listen to me, the more you're going to hear me talk about how cash isn't as valuable as people think it is. Well, the reason for that is it can be printed, and more is printed all the time to supply the U.S. with what it needs, businesses with what they need. And the only reason in my mind that we went to paper money is simply because, you know, having a bunch of people every day carrying around a bunch of gold and silver, I guess they decided is a little, doesn't seem practical.
And the only way we're getting more gold today is if they're digging it out of the ground.
Yeah. And it's getting rare. Like, for instance, the supply of silver, I want to say silver, like 50% of new silver mined automatically goes into technology like solar panels.
Because
It's
there's such a high
also,
demand for it.
yeah, it's also the best conductor of electricity, so it's used in major energy infrastructure um, to ensure that electricity it powers the grid.
Sure. You would think just out of curiosity, you would think that they could come up with something synthetic now that
could achieve those.
yeah, but apparently you can't. Uh, just like is is the case in many other areas, uh, like with our health, with nutrients, that kind of thing. What God made is always better than
Yeah,
what we can manufacture.
I'm glad you said that. That was part of what I was getting at too,
Oh,
which
I'm sorry,
is
man.
no, you're good. That's part of that's where I was trying to go, is that God tends to make stuff so much better than we do. It's true of food, it's true of money and metals. Um, for some reason, everything that we create, not that we can't create good things. I mean, we're using good created equipment, but things that God, certain things that God produced in nature are just superior to anything that we can come up with. So far,
And if you believe in who God is, that's not surprising.
yeah, yeah. Now, so far, our attempts to produce good different forms of money have been bad. And even though I don't love crypto to me is still better than paper money. As long as you know for sure that it's something that you can purchase that can't just be produced en masse. Um, I I know a little bit about crypto mining, but I'm not I'm not savvy enough on that topic to know for sure how the algorithm works or whatever with
Well, Kevin, a
Bitcoin.
question on that. How do you know? Because I have a little bit of experience in crypto myself, mainly in losing money.
Yeah,
But how do you know if one were to come along today? How do I know it's legitimate? Because I lost money one time
yeah,
in an investment that turned out to be really kind of fraudulent. I'd like to know kind of about it. It was fraudulent. How do I know if it's a legitimate endeavor?
that's a good question, and that's honestly the primary reason why I only expose myself oh so much to them because in my mind, unless you are technologically very, very technologically savvy, especially as it relates to crypto, you really don't know what it is that you're buying. Like I can take people's word for it that Bitcoin, for instance, is limited in supply, but unless I fully understand the process of how it's mined, what it takes to produce more of it, unless I fully understand that process, it it is somewhat foolish of me to touch it because I want to say when I last looked, Bitcoin was sitting at 110,000 per Bitcoin, and if I don't know why that is justified, then it's better for me to. I mean, the good thing about Bitcoin though is you can buy, little fractional pieces. So it's never a bad idea to have a little bit in some crypto, but you just have to understand that you are purchasing something that is, not
And also to let the crowd know,
concrete.
we are not offering investment advice either.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not a fiduciary. I do have a lot of experience investing in the market and I'm a real estate investor too, but and you'll see on our Facebook page, I'll say that I have 30,000 hours worth of investing experience. But yeah, we are not fiduciaries. So if you don't go run to the market with what we say, it's always better to talk to a registered investment advisor and I invest investing advisor representative, somebody like that. But if you do go talk to somebody, make sure that they are a fiduciary, um, because there are plenty of financial experts out there that aren't classified as fiduciaries, and if they don't, if they aren't classified as that, that means they can do whatever they want to try to make money off of you and not have to worry about your concerns so much. So
How about that?
yeah, so that fiduciary word is key. And as a matter of fact, our anonymous guest that we had weeks back, he mentioned that term fiduciary. So that's an important term to remember if you're going to go seek counsel on investing related topics. Um, but all that being said, you know, we're going to give you as much good information as we can, but it's even if you talk to a fiduciary, it's still you're still better off doing your own research. Don't ever take something that somebody says just at face value.
In your investment experience in the different areas you've invested in, would you say uh, that your precious metal investments are the ones that you're, I guess I could say, most glad you're invested in, or is there another area uh, that you're proud that you've been in above precious metals?
I would say most of the time, especially over the long term, 10 plus years or more, real estate and public equity, if you are knowledgeable, careful, cautious, those tend to perform better over the long term than gold and silver. Mainly, the main purpose of something like gold and silver is to protect what you have. Um, it's normally, and like I said, it's gone up a lot over the past couple of years, but typically you would not refer to precious metals as an investment. Typically, the purchase of precious metals is just to protect the money that you have already or the wealth you have already accumulated from, you know, more of it being printed because obviously we,
Is it because the chances of that going down in value is so small?
yeah. Now, I mean, excuse me, it can go down in value just like anything else, but it's rare. And typically when it does, especially in the case of gold, it, let's say tomorrow it falls 1% and the next day it comes up 2.50%. So just like stocks, the price of everything is always going to fluctuate a little bit. Even housing prices, even though we don't see it, they fluctuate day to day as well.
So, honestly, we would have to discover something or come up with a way to make something that was better currently than gold and silver is for it to lose value, in the way that it's currently being utilized.
Yeah, going back to what we said earlier about it being God's money, and there's a book, and I would encourage y'all to read it and the audience to read this one. And I don't get money from this, but there's a guy named Robert Kiyosaki that wrote a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad, and he talks, I think, a little bit about precious metals in there. But he has a lot of good information that he shares on sort of switching your mindset from an employee mindset to a business owner type mindset. But he talks about precious metals. I think his main investment over time was real estate. Real estate's where he made his millions and billions. Um, yeah, and even though I talk a lot about stocks, what makes real estate special as well is, obviously another thing that God only made so much of is land. there's
Mhm.
only there's only so much land that you can have property on. And even though you have a lot of online businesses now, every business needs some sort of hard location still. Now they may not need as much space as they used to, but everybody needs some sort of you need a space to live in.
And I know that
Um
there are certain pieces of land that are exception to the rule. I get that.
mhm.
They'll be in a family for 100 years, but which they're an exception to the rule. But didn't we have a guest that told us that on average, about every 5 years, they change hands?
um
Something like that?
a house or land.
The land or how or well, property.
That's probably true. I think a lot of people do tend to move, and I would say that I mean there's always scenarios where it's not bad, but I would say if people fully understood the economy and the value of having assets like real estate, unless they were moving from one purchased property to another, I would say that generally making a move, unless you're accepting some super good job, is generally actually a bad idea because if you sell that property, um, especially in certain situations, if you don't have a lot of equity, and that's another thing that we'll talk about, if you don't have a lot of equity built up in the home, then you just sold something that could potentially help you out a lot in the future if you were to rent it out. And um, there's been that's how the American economy and many other economies work at the moment is you are rewarded for purchasing and owning assets and making money from those assets. Now, that being said, it also can cause problems. We have certain, I'm going to try not to name any specific names, but you have some institutional money managers buying up property. We don't want too much of that. I would rather more property, more real estate, more land be owned by smaller investors. But with the way that capitalism works, it's sort of anybody's game. It's basically as it stands right now, a giant game of Monopoly. The more that you acquire, the more that you're going to make. And that's also why the Bible warns us so much about wealth and stewardship because he knows that man's game is always to accumulate and accumulate and accumulate as much as you can. And he's saying, no, I need you to he I'm not gonna say that, a lot of people would tell you God wants us to be communist. I'm not gonna say that, but he does want us to be more communal than we typically are. I will say that. Or he would want us to share more than we do for sure.
Uh,
Um,
Grok says that, and this is talking about homeownership specifically. Uh, the median duration of U.S. home ownership is 11.8 to 12.3 years as of 2022 to 2024, meaning that half of homeowners will sell within this time frame.
yeah.
Which means that very small percentage of people are actually taking out a 30-year mortgage and paying it off and being in that home.
Yeah, I told somebody not too long ago, I don't remember who it was, but I told them in my opinion, selling a home, especially if you have a home in a good area, is always a mistake. And I don't say that lightly.
Sure.
And I think that's something that still today a lot of people don't realize is that if you have property or a home in a decent area, it is 99.9%, and this is just my opinion, but 99.9% of the time, I would call it a mistake to sell that. At least with the way that our economy works currently, because as I was saying earlier, we are rewarded for acquiring new assets, maintaining assets, and deriving income from those
Sure.
assets.
Well, just think about this from a standpoint of the first home you ever purchase. If you're able to pay it off, generally homes go up in value.
Yeah.
Uh, Once you pay off a home, if you manage that equity right, uh, you'll never have another house note again. You're done paying interest forever if you manage the equity right.
Hmm.
Because even if you moved into another home and you don't try to go extravagant with it, you're going to be able to pay it off if you move into another home. That way, you don't have interest again. It's just all around a good idea to be able to pay off that initial investment, wouldn't you say?
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah. And it's, I think what gets a lot of people and why a lot of people end up selling as opposed to just moving to a different location. I think another reason why it's so popular for people to sell is they get to the point to where they feel like, oh, this is going to be too much of a headache. Like, yeah, I could rent it out, but I'm going to have to deal with plumbers. I'm going to have to deal with electricians. And
mhm.
people make it out to be much more difficult than it actually is to manage, especially if it's just one or two rental properties. Everybody in the world, in my opinion, should have at least one or two rental properties because it makes your life a whole lot easier. But, you know, and that's the problem when a lot more people don't own them is then you have a high concentration of just a few people that own all of the real estate and all of the land. Um,
And that's when prices shoot up.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. So I would rather more people become real estate investors. Now at the same time, I don't want everybody to become super greedy like some large corporation and buy up, 1,000 properties. But and it's another reason why I'm sharing this sort of thing with you. Not that you don't have other podcasters and YouTubers advising you to invest in real estate, but the other thing about how capitalism works is me telling you any of this stuff is actually not in my interest because in a capitalistic society, unless you are part of the same group, the same company, technically we're all in competition for assets with each other.
Kevin, that's why I've
Um,
always been suspicious of people that you see online say, "I've done all the work, so you don't have to.
mhm.
I've discovered all this kind of stuff. I lost all kinds of money doing this. This is exactly how you can do this." And I always wondered, if you're able to do that and you're telling me how to do this, and I'll be actually taking business away from you, why are you telling me this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That has always been that I don't, I guess anybody who's thinking about it, a thinking person is going to come up with that. But uh, generally, it has always been my experience that once they have milked something as much as they can, then they will sell it to you.
Yeah. I mean, that's certainly true of certain things, but land, property, real estate, there's so much of it that, none of us should feel overly threatened about encouraging people to invest in real
Yeah,
estate.
yeah.
But yeah, certain businesses, you'd be hard pressed to find them telling you their trade secrets while it's still
Yeah,
their most profitable thing.
that's right.
Um, but fortunately for y'all, I um have an obligation to be truthful and I have an obligation to educate people. So plus I'm still
I mean, just if you want to be good and righteous, Kevin. I mean,
yeah. And I do want to be good and righteous, although I'm a sinner just like everybody else, fall short every day. But the important thing is we're trying to get better all the time. Um, but yeah, and like I was saying, there's so much property, so much real estate. It's not like there's not plenty to go around. Although we are still, I believe, in a pretty decent housing shortage. So I would expect more homes to be built, and uh, there's always going to be more commercial developments being built for sure. Um, I've even seen some cranes lately. I think in either Flowood or Brandon. I know there's a new development coming up behind Community Bank in
Yeah, there
Flowood.
is. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Always a big parking garage there as well,
yeah, yeah. So
which is kind of strange to me because there's so much land available even around in that area right there. Uh, Unless they just want everybody to be able to congregate there together, I'm not really sure why we're why we're building a garage there. But anyway,
yeah, no, I don't know. And didn't they build some apartments back there
they
too,
did.
or something?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would imagine that a lot more housing will be built, even if
Really,
it's not.
I think it's kind of a condo
Yeah,
type thing. Yeah,
townhome
yeah,
type
yeah, yeah.
deal. Yeah. And I don't, and it's not just townhomes that have this, but those of us that are investors, most of us do not like, uh, what do you call them? Homeowners associations.
No,
Most of us don't like
amen.
HOAs.
Let me add my vote to the ones that don't like those.
Now, they can be useful, in some ways, but
Just like everything else, there's pros and cons.
yeah, but more often than not, it's not really going to be worth your money, in my opinion. HOA fees aren't.
HOAs are kind of like unions.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Pros and cons.
That's right.
They're great when you're a part of them, but if you're a business owner and you're dealing with a bunch of unionized employees, it's a different
I
story.
mean, let me just tell you this, just from my perspective, I've been involved in probably 2 or 3 in my lifetime because of the nature of the job that I had.
Hmm.
Uh, all the unions that I have been a part of have ever done for me is take my money.
Yeah.
That's all they've ever done for me.
Well,
Generally, honestly,
yeah,
this is just my opinion. If you show up to work on time and do everything that you're supposed to do like a good employee, you'll never have use of the union
yeah,
because generally employers are going to treat you good as long as you treat them good.
yeah,
And that's always been my experience. They all unions exist for, to me, is to help people who are not good employees take advantage of the employer.
yeah. Well, I mean, that certainly is true in certain circumstances. And most of the time, I would say that you're definitely right. Most of the time, if you're a good employee and you have a good employer, there's not going to be a super strong need for
And
one.
as long as you keep those union dues going in, you'll never hear from the union.
Yeah, yeah. But you know, unfortunately, I have experienced a place where, uh, you know, management isn't doing what they should be doing, aren't as good as they should be, and so there are.
No.
Yeah, I'm not going to call out names of organizations, but I can certainly see at least a few use cases for them. But like as you've said, they never end up being as useful as you want them to. They just like everybody else, they care about you paying dues, and they're going to make it difficult for you to stop paying dues if you ever want to stop paying
Right.
dues. And they're going to give you a hard time with representation and so on if you
Yeah, it almost
withdraw
takes
your
an act
dues.
of Congress to get out of one of those things.
Yeah, it's difficult for sure. And you know, they try to get you. They negotiate backroom deals with the organization anyway, like that you're not seeing. They want to keep you happy with certain little small raises for the most part. Now, every now and then, a good union will, stage some sort of little protest and they'll go out and hold signs up or whatever and try to negotiate for a raise. But more often than not, they're going to do these backroom deals and just try to get you to accept a 2% raise or,
Sure.
something like that. But yeah, their use is limited. They can be good, but like you said, more often than not, they're they shouldn't be necessary. Well,
It's
I'll stick
interesting
to
that,
that.
remember we had one year, I don't know if you remembered it or not, it was probably before your time, but, uh, the NFL Players Association is a union,
Hmm.
and, one year when they were on strike, all the owners decided that they were just gonna go out and hire different players. So they did, uh, and for a portion of the year, every team was playing with either former players that had retired or current players that no one had ever heard of. It was a very interesting year. Do you remember when that happened, or were you around when that happened?
I don't know. You don't know what year that was by
I
any chance?
honestly can't remember. It was probably back. It's probably back. It was back in the 80s. You wouldn't
Yeah.
remember it anyway. You
I
weren't
wasn't
around.
yeah, I wasn't born till
I
'89,
got
so
you. Okay. Well, it was a very interesting year. It was very
1982.
okay.
82.
Whenever you would play, whenever a team would play, not only would you not know how good the other team was, you really, in a lot of instances, didn't know how good your team was because nobody knew these players. It was a very interesting year.
Yeah. How are y'all looking this year, huh? Don't know yet.
In fact, some of the players who never would have gotten a chance, very few, but there were several, got to stay with the team when they actually brought the players back because they found some good players,
Mhm.
and who would have had an opportunity had the strike not happened.
Yeah.
Uh, but it was an interesting time, and I think they probably one of the stipulations going forward, because it never has happened again. They probably had a stipulation in their agreement that they would never hire replacement players again.
Yeah.
It's probably what was one of the stipulations in that agreement.
So I guess they didn't like the results of that too much.
Oh no, I know the players didn't,
Yeah.
but
Well, I mean, not only the players, but obviously the owners didn't like that too much either. But nowadays, fast forward to it's 2025 and you have certain really high profile players making $100 million plus contracts
that's
for a
right.
few years. So it kind of makes you wonder if they're thinking about doing that again.
Well,
But
Yeah,
and part of this. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
you're good. It says one of the reasons for that is because the NFL's players' careers are so short, so the striking is like a high personal risk for players, so they just would rather not even try.
Right.
yeah,
Right.
it definitely, especially if you're just doing it by yourself, it definitely is a risk.
Because
The
Kaepernick, I mean, like he
Kaepernick, is that what you said? That's
because
who I was
he's
thinking.
gone. Yeah, like
Yeah,
well, that his situation is a little bit different. He brought that on himself, but which is kind of the same scenario. You're right, kind of the same scenario. But uh, with the players, for years and years, they didn't get the kind of money they're getting today. They couldn't leverage their worth the way that they do today. Um, for instance, Babe Ruth, the highest Babe Ruth ever made, and it was a scandal. At the time, he made $100,000 on a contract.
hmm
Uh, were highly regarded as maybe one of the best players of all time. Um, if you look at Shohei Ohtani today, and I can tell you his contract.
hmm
Uh, in fact, I'll look it up real quick.
yeah. I've definitely heard that name. I don't watch a ton of Major League Baseball, but I do have two nephews that love baseball, and I feel like I've heard him
Yeah.
talking
Now, I
about
would,
that one.
to me, this is just my personal opinion, just from watching him, and especially lately, he has an argument right now of being one of the best players of all time. I think he's that good. However,
Is it his batting average that makes him
well, and
more
a
fun?
pitcher.
Oh, he's a good
In
pitcher
the
too.
last game he pitched in, he struck out 10 players in the game and hit 3 home runs,
Dang.
whoa,
uh, which has never been done by a pitcher in a postseason game.
Yeah.
Uh, he has a 10-year, $700 million contract.
dang,
Now,
10 years, 700 million.
10 years, $700 million.
That's mind numbing.
Uh, and most of that is diverted. His contract runs through the 2033 season. Let's see here. He has deferred. See, what is it? He deferred $680 million of the contract to receive it annually starting in 2034.
Jeez.
Because if he moves out of California where he's employed, he doesn't have to pay their taxes,
Yeah. Yep.
Mm,
That makes
which
sense.
is nearly 50% on as a luxury tax
right.
for that kind of money. Very smart move,
Mhm.
especially considering this. You think about he's going to be receiving what is this now? He's getting $2 million a year right now until 2034, and he'll start receiving 20 million a year in 2034. Now, he, unless you're just some kind of extravagant spender that wants to use this money, delaying that was the best move he could make.
Yeah.
Is that guaranteed though? Does he have to
Oh
play?
yeah,
Because
it's
what if he gets
guaranteed.
hurt?
I mean, this. Let me see here.
There usually are additional at least some additional stipulations. I don't know exactly what it is that they would
It's
do.
usually like a major portion of it is guaranteed, but some of it's not.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's
I'm sure that's the case with his too, but I don't know for sure.
because if he
Let's see
deferred that
here.
all to the end and he doesn't even get it, like that would be a disaster.
Yeah.
Well, I mean this is not unprecedented. Uh, there's a player in fact, he may have retired before you would remember him either too, but uh, Bobby Bonilla,
Mhm.
who played for the Mets. Let me see when he retired. Bobby Bonilla, who played for the New York Mets.
2001.
Okay, he's still receiving money
Oh wow.
right now from deferred payments. In fact, there's a
One
certain day,
1.19 million every July 1st,
And he retired when, did you say?
2001.
2001.
and
Dang.
he had deferred money in a deal, and they actually call that Bobby Bonilla Day whenever he gets his check. Now,
Huh.
again, I don't know who came up with that system, but it was a brilliant move on the player's part. Uh, this guy hasn't played in almost 25 years, and he's still getting money.
Yeah.
Through 2035.
Okay,
That's
It's
for another
years.
10 years.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean that's amazing.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a really good idea for a lot of people for sure. Um
Now, see, there's also, and I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but there's also benefits. Uh, Even though they're having to pay that money, there's also current benefits to the team as well, tax
Mhm.
wise.
yeah, well I'm glad you brought up taxes because this leads me into another little quick segue that we can do as well. A lot of people I think more people are learning because of YouTube and podcasts like this one, but and I'm gonna start this off by saying again, I'm not a fiduciary, I'm not a tax expert, but I can share a little bit of tax knowledge with you. One reason, like Chris said, taxes in certain places, and I'm sure California's are pretty high. So what you can do to legally avoid some of that, and what obviously a lot of large public businesses do, is they become a C corporation, an S corporation, an LLC designated as one of those, or a partnership. But there are different levels of business entities that come with different tax benefits. An LLC in and of itself and by itself doesn't isn't necessarily tax advantaged per se. Like the point of creating an LLC is to protect you from personal liability, but it gives you the ability to pick a tax designation for your business. Um, but anyway, like Jack, if you don't mind, real quick, could you look up what are the long term capital gains tax rates for 2025?
Yeah.
Let's see what that tells us.
Otani's contract started in 2024, uh, and they claim, at least the report here says that the contract has quote already paid for itself in revenue. that they paid. They paid him 700 million. They claim that in revenue and sales and shirts, all these kind of stuff has already paid for itself,
Jeez.
even giving him that much. So there's a precedent for it. There is a cost benefit. You're gambling as an organization by doing that, but he has paid off in this instance. There's been a lot of organizations that have lost money on people. However, apparently this one has paid off already.
Yeah. Let's see here.
I just sent it to you.
Yeah. I'm gonna pull it up on my phone. I was trying to look at it on my watch, but it's too small. Um, okay, so according to ChatGPT, for single filers up to 48,350, it's 0%. Uh, that went up a little bit, so that's good to see. I'm pretty sure that's the amount that you can make and not, I guess, pay any taxes. So that's good. Married filing jointly, you can make up to $96,700, and that's hard to believe. That's really good if you can make 96,000 as a married couple and not have to pay anything. Um, I'm starting to wonder if this is even correct, even though ChatGPT told us this. 15% for incomes above the 0% threshold up to single filers 533. Nah, hang on. Let me try Google real quick.
Yeah, maybe that's wrong.
Long-term capital. I mean, it's like,
I got you. Look at I'll screenshot it again. This is
um,
the source that it gave, but I think it copied it wrong from the source.
let's see. Yeah, hang on. Bipartisan tax policy. Let me try Nerd Wallet. I think Nerd Wallet's pretty reliable if it'll show me. All right, well here's capital gains tax rates for, I'll just do 2026 according to Nerd Wallet. 0% up to 49,450, which that is what it said, and then 0 to maybe under Trump they got better. 0 to 98,900 if married and filing jointly. 15% if you make 49,451 all the way to 545,500. And then it says married filing jointly, that same 15% from 98,000 to about 613,000. Then, most people aren't going to care about this at all because
Kevin, I'm gonna tell you this. I'm gonna jump in here for a
yeah,
second.
go ahead.
If you're making enough money to have to pay more than 15% of your income, you're doing very well.
Yeah. Yeah, I was about to say once we start getting to this 545,000 a year mark, that's obviously going to be more than most people
Well,
are ever going to
I'll
have to
say
be
it this
dealing with.
way: if you're complaining about having to pay more than 15% in your taxes, the rest of us want you to cry rivers.
Yeah. I know that's true. This is definitely changed, and I guess it's been since Trump and others have taken back over, because it definitely used to be worse. Because I'm only seeing 3 different. Well, this is capital gains tax rate, so that's always much lower than personal income. I guess I was thinking I was looking at the regular income tax rate. So capital gains is like selling a property, producing a profit, selling stocks that you produced a profit on. Now I'm gonna try to pull up the personal income. This is gonna be worse.
This is one of the things that I have a problem with, Kevin. And you tell me how you feel about it. A person has a job that they make money on. They pay taxes on that money.
Mhm.
They buy a property, and they've been paying taxes on that property every year. why should I then be punished after I've been taxed several times? And if I made money off of that property, why should I be taxed again on it?
Yeah. No, I agree. We pay a whole lot of taxes that are unnecessary. And we've
Well, it's not even about unnecessary. I think it's unfair.
yeah,
I think it's, it's almost like being double or triple taxed on that same property. You want to get rid of it. Now I got to pay taxes on what I get after I've already paid taxes on it,
yeah.
you know.
Well, that's why I f I forget if it's a 1090 there's some sort of exchange. Let me look that up real quick.
I don't care what it's used for. I don't care if you took it and bought cotton candy with it after you sold the property. I still don't think you should be charged tax on it.
Oh, no, I agree with you for sure. 1031 exchange. So what a lot of investors do, property investors, real estate investors, if they want to continue to invest in real estate and avoid taxes in the near term, let's say you bought a house that is worth, $300,000. Well, now you want to invest into something else, but you want to avoid taxes legally. You can 1031 exchange that into a like or greater, basically an improvement on that. So let's say now you want to get into apartments or you want to buy this commercial building that's $500,000 or $1,000,000. You can bump the the profit that you produce from selling that home into this next property. And it brings your cost basis up and you don't, you don't technically eliminate your tax, uh, taxable amount at that moment, but it's like kicking the can. You're
Sure,
kicking the can down the road.
sure.
And that's generally good enough because you can indefinitely keep kicking the can down the road. And when you die and your heirs inherit those things, at least so far, until or unless somebody changes it, hopefully they don't. Once you, if you kick the can long enough and you die and you pass things down to your heirs, the cost basis goes back to zero. So now there are no taxes owed. So
Awesome.
that's that's one of those things that a lot of wealthy people know and a lot of middle class and lower income households don't know. But I hope that everybody will remember that one and
It's kind of like technically
um
your hospital bills as well.
yeah,
Once you die, your parent, your family's technically not responsible for your hospital bills anymore either.
yeah. You'll hear other financial influencers and investors and so on talk about something called buy, borrow, die. Although I'm not to the extent of Ramsey where I hate debt that much, but I'm definitely, you know,
It's definitely better to do it that way if you can,
yeah,
for sure.
it's better to be very careful how much debt you take on, in my opinion. And if you do take on debt, it's better to use it for things like real estate, especially if it's in a good location where you're pretty sure that, and I say pretty sure because you can never be 100%, but you're pretty sure that the value is going to go up over time. Because, you can go and look at certain real estate markets in bad areas with bad schools, and you know, you may still be able to find some homes in certain areas of the country that are still 15,000, 20,000. They're usually torn up or trap houses and that sort of thing. But every now and then you can still find a good deal. But anyway, the quality of the schools and the surrounding neighborhood and the businesses, uh, all of that helps determine the value of the properties in that area. Um, but yeah, let me get back to this tax thing real quick before I thought I had it pulled up.
Yeah, I've always been told that you didn't want uh, several things if you're trying to invest in a property you didn't want to happen. One of them is down the road from you on the same road, somebody open up a trailer park.
Yeah,
That would by definition pull your house value down immediately.
yeah. I've
Because don't they within a certain region, they take the property values and average them, and that determines in some way your property value, right?
You know, I'll have to look up and see how exactly it is that they determine that because off the top of my head, I don't know. And I know that people believe that about mobile homes and trailers. And here's the thing though, even though that is true some of the time, that doesn't have to be true if you have good property owners or mobile home owners that don't just throw them all together and stack them on top of each other. If you were to give each mobile home a decent amount of space, make the area pretty, plant some stuff. I mean, that's, it, in my opinion, something like that isn't going to negatively impact local property values. It's when you get these folks that just want to, all they care about is making money and they just throw them together and
That's
they,
where I think the problem is a lot of, I think that's where the reputation comes in
mhm,
of the trailer park.
yeah. So if you,
It's kind of like lawyers being greedy.
yeah,
I mean, how many are not? You know?
yeah, yeah, it can be done right, but unfortunately, many people don't do it the way that it should be done.
Right, right.
But real quick before I forget, and this is 2025. Well, here's 2026. This is federal tax brackets, federal or personal income tax. So 0 to 12,400, it's 10%. Married or filing jointly, that 10% is up to 24,800. Then from 12,000 to 50,000, roughly, it's 12%. And this is for single filer, from 50,000 to 105,000, 22%. Um, and right now the top is 37%. And this is sort of in that Crimea River range for most of y'all, because that's 640,000 and above. Uh, you're going to be taxed 37%. Now, even though I still think that personal income is much higher than it should be taxes, the good thing about it is it's a progressive system. So some people think that if you start making more money, you're going to lose money because your taxes jump up, but it doesn't work that way
And
because
I can personally tell you this, Kevin, and if you donate to charities, if you donate like I am convicted to my church, and you do it right, you don't have to worry about any of this
yeah,
because generally, if you donate like you're supposed to, you're not going to owe taxes anyway.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, donations definitely help. Um, yeah, especially if you give those donations to, you know, certain registered nonprofits and so on.
Because you can correct me if I'm wrong. I do believe that you can take dollar for dollar off of your income. For every dollar you donate, you get to take that off of your income, right? I mean, I think that's correct.
It used to not be. It may have changed. Now, I mean, you still get to take a certain amount off, but for the longest time, it wasn't dollar for dollar.
I got you.
It was like 50 cents per dollar, but it may have changed. And I want to say, in certain instances, with certain nonprofits, it might be dollar for dollar, but for the longest time, it wasn't dollar for dollar. That it would be nice if they would, and I'll have to look later to see if they changed it. It would be nice if they did that, but and they should do
Because
that.
it would serve of its twofold purpose. Not only are you able to give to a worthy cause, but it's keeping you out of a higher tax bracket in many cases if you're close to that limit. You know.
Yeah, yeah. But what I was wanting people to know from this is that just because you jump into a higher tax bracket, don't be alarmed and think that I have to make less money. The tax system is progressive, so like you can still make up to your 50,000, or that first 12,000 is going to be taxed 10%, then up to 50,000. From that 12,000, it's 12%. Then you don't get into that 22% threshold until you start making above 50,400.
Okay, I
Um,
didn't know it was staggered like that.
yeah, it
I thought
staggers.
that I was under the impression that say the limit was 125,000. That if I made 120 and then all of a sudden next year I made 126,000, that all my income was taxed at that higher tax rate. That's not the
Mm,
case.
Mm-mm.
Okay, okay.
Thankfully, I used to think that too.
I got you.
So
Okay.
yeah, that was I'm glad you said that because that's what I was trying to get at here was uh get out of that train of thought because that's not the case.
In fact, until
Um
this very moment, I believe that was true the whole time.
yeah. I think that it would help a lot of people to know that that's not the case and that it's good that that's not the case because I think for a long time that deterred a lot of people from making more money. And when I say making more money, just like Chris said, I'm not deterring people from you should definitely give uh whether it be to your church or whatever, give to different causes. But yeah, like I was saying, I just wanted to share that with you in case you're like a lot of us used to be and didn't realize that it was a progressive staggered tax system. Um but and the reason a minute ago I was telling you about those long-term capital gains rates, it goes to show you that businesses and investors always almost always have better tax rates. And the more that you do and conduct business like the government wants you to, generally speaking, at least when you have conservatives in power, you're gonna pay less taxes when you're doing the things that the governing body wants you to do in terms of business. Uh, and what I mean by that is you're owning a business, you're producing things that people want. You, you're more so a producer than a consumer. You're going to pay less in taxes. We typically it the way it typically works is consumers almost always carry more of the burden than producers and business owners do. And it's been that way for a while. But because of the way that our education system is, people are taught that, you know, go to school, get a job, and I'm sounding like Rich Dad Poor Dad now. I started thinking about this book, but everybody's taught to go to school, get an education, get a degree, go get a regular job, and that you'll be fine for doing that. And for a long time that was true, but now that we're getting into this stage of the economy that we're in now, I think it would behoove people to have other skills. And I'm not saying that go out and quit your job. Like I still have a regular job that I work too, but it's a good idea to have other either businesses or assets.
Well, there's also other areas that you need to at least bring up to your children and those who are young enough to change jobs, especially in the trades, because right now we have such a lack of people in those skill jobs uh, where you don't necessarily have to go to school for those. You just become an apprentice and learn those trades that are very, very good paying jobs.
Yeah.
Is that what you were getting at?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, trades and stuff are good too. And, I think a lot of people were thinking that those jobs were going to be the first to go with threat from AI, but it's seeming now I would say a lot of folks are thinking that the first jobs that are going to be gone from AI are going to be your white collar
That's
type
right.
jobs. So
That's right.
plumbers, electricians, and I mean these are just two examples. Don't think that I'm only talking about these two, but they're good examples. Welders,
Plumbers, electricians, carpenters.
yeah,
Yeah, an AI is not going to perform those jobs.
yeah. Well, welding, it's
Now, a
good.
robot can do that.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
welding's a little bit maybe more at risk than some of the others, but anything that requires a lot of awkward human movement is probably gonna be a good bet for quite some time, in my opinion.
I think it will be a long time before robots or AI is framing up a house.
Yeah. Yeah, construction and, unfortunately, construction unless you're like a supervisor or manager, it's never really paid that well, but I mean, it should definitely be safe in terms of, especially in a
Well, I think that some of those salaries are going up now because of the lack of people available for those jobs.
yeah, it probably is. It probably is going up. And we'll as long as we have a decent economy, I'm sure it'll continue to get better over
And
time.
it's funny how, the more progressive a society gets, the less people want to have those harder type jobs. You know, the ones
Mhm.
outside, the ones where you're actually having to put a hard hat on or put steel toed shoes on for. They become the less sought after the more prosperous society gets.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely true. It's, you know, another one that I think about a lot is roofers.
Yeah,
There's only, oh, so many people that are roofers, and yeah, because that's especially, I'm told some of you in the audience before that we're in Mississippi, and boy, oh boy, being a roofer in Mississippi during the summertime has to be pretty rough.
it's a young
Um,
man's job.
yeah. Now granted, there still seem to be a decent amount of roofers out and about, but I'm sure the number is dwindling. Um, and I would imagine, and another good one in the future, I would think, HVAC. HVAC's been good for a long time, and
That's right.
I think it'll continue to be good in the future. A friend of mine that I used to go to school with, I won't share his name, and I can't remember the name of the business that he's working for. I'll share it later after I talk to him and make sure that he's okay with it. But a friend that I used to go to school with, is an HVAC guy, and I think he's a manager now, but, I think that business has treated him pretty well over the years. It seems like that's been a good,
A-
reliable
And
trade.
there are some decent companies with some good people that treat their employees good.
Mhm.
Uh, and just like any other type of investment, if you're investing in yourself, it would behoove you to do research before you uh, get involved in these certain companies. You know, ask around, talk to people that have worked for them. Would they, especially the ones that aren't working for them anymore, would they go back?
Yeah.
Those kind of things.
Yeah, no, you definitely don't you want to try to avoid toxic organizations for sure. Um, Unfortunately, I've worked for quite a few of those.
Uh,
And when you're knee deep in it, you're like, "Oh, man, I wish I would've known this
oh,
well
amen,
prior."
amen.
And the other bad thing about a toxic organization is it can hurt future opportunities for you because, you know, if you don't get along, especially if it's like supervisors and managers, well, now you've got folks on your resume that are going to have to vouch for you for your
That's
for
right.
your next potential opportunity. And if your next opportunity calls the previous and they don't like you, now you've got a problem on your hands. So, yeah, I would say do do your best to avoid the the bad bosses and the toxic. As Chris said, do your due diligence and do some research ahead. Um, but yeah, trades I think are still gonna be safe for some time because awkward human movement seems to be still be tricky for AI, although it is advancing. And I mean, I do see robots now. You'll see videos of robots walking around and doing stuff, but
Kevin, I used to think, and this is largely still true right now. I have a grandfather that I can remember, and I mean, I was very young when he died, but I have a grandfather that actually my great grandfather, uh, who when he was a young man, the only mode of transportation, really viable mode of transportation, was a horse. Okay, and we're talking about late 1800s into early 1900s, right?
mhm.
And by the time that he died, he had seen a man land on the moon from growing up in that time. And I used to think there will never be another generation that experiences that kind of boom in technology. But every day that I live, I think this could happen in my lifetime because the advancements, uh, you just look at research. When I was a kid in high school, when I was a kid in high school, the easiest thing that you could do was go to the library, go to the card catalog, and a lot of people don't even know what I'm talking about right now.
Yeah, Dewey Decimal
But you
System and all.
and you look up books that way, and it was very limited what you could find. Even if your library happened to have that book, you could, and today in about 3 milliseconds in the contraption that you have in your pocket, I can get just about any information I want. And
Yeah,
this has happened in my lifetime. And now you're talking about advances in AI. They can even help you search for things that you don't even know you're looking for,
yeah,
and give you. And this has happened in my lifetime. So I may have to redo my estimation about of course the advancements that my grandfather experienced were definitely huge, but we may be experiencing some things that we don't even imagine yet.
yeah. No, if AI were to take off like people want it to, I would imagine that it would certainly achieve a lot of booms that it would be hard for us to do ourselves as humans. And we could potentially see another really dramatic technological shift over time. But as you said, though, it's really fascinating to me how people born late 1800s, early 1900s, how mind blowing that must have been to go from horses and mules to cars and then, you know, space shuttles.
And before he died, he saw land a man on the moon.
Yeah,
That's just
supposedly.
it's mind. Yeah, that's right. It's mind
Supposedly.
blowing. It's mind
Yeah, it
blowing
is.
how far things came in his lifetime for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, anytime somebody talks about the moon landing, you immediately start thinking about all the the conspiracies about did we really, go there. But what we do know, regardless of where we've actually landed, we've certainly sent plenty of space shuttles up and we've sent satellites up and
Hmm.
robots. I'm sure most of that stuff is not fake. I mean, we wouldn't have GPS.
supposedly.
Yeah, yeah, supposedly. We wouldn't have GPS systems, without satellites and I'm sure the International Space Station is real, or at least I would hope.
That's
That
right.
that would be a very elaborate fake if it wasn't real, um but yeah, that stuff will continue to get better over time, I'm sure. Um were we talking about G forces on one of the last podcast episodes?
Yeah.
Cuz I remember uh, on the topic of technological advancement in space, I'm wondering if, yeah, like if we finally get to where we can send humans somewhere at the speed of light, what that's going to potentially do to the human body outside of the or in the vacuums of space and so on. But
I mean, all we've got to do is pull up Star Wars and watch. I
yeah,
mean,
They seem
yeah,
fine.
they tell us right there.
it's going to take a lot of physicists and astronomers and people much more intelligent than I am to figure out all that stuff. But yeah, we're at Jack, you said we're at an hour and a half, so if anybody else got any last points or financial related questions or anything you want to cover before we
Buy low, sell high.
yeah, that that advice is much easier said than done.
Amen.
It is good advice, but people tend to panic buy and panic sell. So, but yeah, ideally you you want to buy low and sell high, but at the same time, if you spend your whole life waiting for a crash, you never know when a crash is going to happen. So I would say invest little by little over time, but don't invest so much that a crash will blow you out completely.
Amen.
But we definitely can't spend our whole lives being like, I'm waiting for a crash. Or you'll see these memes with a stick man pointing at a house with a stick, like, come on, do a crash. Waiting for housing prices to crash or interest rates to crash. But yeah, ideally buying low and selling high, looking at the PE ratio. I think I've talked about that before when it comes to stocks. Knowing what the true value of that asset is important. But yeah, with that being said, I think we're ready to wrap this one up. So appreciate y'all joining us again, and I hope y'all like our new little studio setup, and we'll continue to use this for the foreseeable
I like
future.
it, Kevin.
I like it. I think it's
I like
good.
it.
and we'll I'm sure we'll adapt it some more over time. But
That's right.
yeah, thanks. I think that's it.